Hi, welcome to the first of my Wednesday afternoon weekly Facebook Live chats. Now, I am Jay Raven, dark fantasy and gothic horror writer, and you'll be able to tell straight away that although I'm a writer, I'm not a broadcaster, and this is going to be rather amateurish, but hopefully fun, so please stick around. Now, why am I doing this? I don't know about you, but I get fed up looking at books and looking at names of writers on the books and not knowing anything about them. And I just thought it'd be nice to get to know my readers and for my readers to get to know me, for you to be able to hear me, see me, for me to be able to share some bits and bobs about what goes on behind the scenes of my writing, what goes on in my madcap and often very disastrous private life, and just basically hang out and have a bit of a laugh. So if you indulge me this week, what I'd like to do is basically just introduce myself properly and have a bit of a chat about how I got here and what it's all about. Now, as you can tell from the accent, I'm from Scotland. I come from a very small city, a beautiful, small, picturesque city on a river called Glasgow, full of lovely, wonderful people. When I became an adult, I went into newspapers, had to move to England, and I now live in Birmingham, which is the UK's second city, and I love it. It's full of canals and restaurants and bars and amazing places and historic buildings. I just love it to bits. Now, because I'm Glaswegian, I have trouble saying a few words, and you'll soon pick up on this, so please bear with me. Two words that I have real trouble saying are, instead of saying orange, I say orange, and instead of saying murder, I say murder. So please bear with me. Now, one of the things I want to sort of quickly point out is that I'm having trouble at the moment with wasps. We had a wasp's nest in our roof. Bloke came out to sort it, and I thought that was an end to it, but obviously there's a second nest somewhere in our chimney, and every day they are coming down, and today I've encountered 6 of the blighters. So if at any point you see a black shape sort of flying around behind me, that'll be a wasp. Don't panic, but please shout behind you so that I can do something about it. Now, on some of the groups you'll be seeing this on, you'll see I've got 2 names, and so let's deal with that straight away. My real name is Ian Pattison, and under that name I write humour, and Jay Raven is a pen name for my sort of horror and dark historical chillers. And the reason that I keep them separate, don't cross the streams, is that when I started doing darker material about 10 years ago, some people who knew my comedy writing got hold of some of the serious stories, and despite the fact I told them, look, they're creepy, they're meant to be scary, they'd come back to me and they'd say, you know what? I really liked that story. I really did like that story. I had to read it twice because I couldn't find the jokes. So now I try to keep both personas as separate as possible. And on these Facebook Lives, I'll only be here as Jay Raven. So no worries about that. Now, let me just very quickly tell you how the Jay Raven thing came about, how Jay Raven came into my life. Up until about 10 years ago, I was specialising in short stories, quirky short stories with funny endings, all sorts of stuff like that. And I saw an advertisement from a Canadian publisher called Absolute Express. They were bringing out a collection of flash fiction stories, so of 1,000 words or less. And the theme was going to be creatures of the night. Now, my first reaction was, oh, I could take the mickey out of this. I could have some fun with this. I could do some comedy stories and just send the whole thing up. And I started sort of planning out a couple of stories to do that with. And then I had second thought, and I suddenly thought, do you know what? That's too easy. That's lazy. I could really challenge myself if I tried to do it straight. So as a kid, I was completely obsessed with Hammer horror films. In fact, I used to skip school to go to the cinema to watch them. And the whole sort of vampires, werewolves, witches, Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, all of that sort of stuff, the sort of classic Gothic horror. And so I thought, I'll try and do a sort of homage to those. And I'll do a vampire story and I'll do a werewolf story. And I duly sent them off, expecting nothing to happen. To my shock and surprise, they came back to me straight away and said, we love these stories and we'd love to use them in the book. Have you got any others, anything similar? Because we've got other sort of horror-based anthologies coming out soon, and we'd really love to have more of your work in there. And at that point, two things happened. One, I suddenly realized that hidden away inside my head, I had dozens and dozens of horror stories just aching to come out. And the other thing was that At Absolutely said to me, you really need to have a pen name for this. If this is going to be a whole separate side to your output, you're going to have to be a separate person. And so I sort of scratched my head and thought, what would be a good pen name? Raven. I wanted something with Raven in it because obviously of the Edgar Allan Poe sort of connotations. And I also wanted a name that was simple. J sounded very simple. And also I wanted a name that was perhaps a little androgynous, going on the sort of J.K. Rowling idea. Plus, I wanted something that sounded North American because at that point, a lot of my work was appearing in Canadian and American anthologies. And what happened was I was looking through a list of most popular birds in North America. And in the list, it had various birds and it had J, Raven. And I thought, do you know what? That sounds good. I could use that. And hence J Raven was born. What's happened is that up until about last year, I was concentrating mostly on novellas and short stories. But I had a great bit of luck, and I was signed up just before Christmas by Junction Publishing to bring out horror novels. And so now I'm doing much longer work. And this year, I brought out To Snare a Witch. Set in the 17th century, all sorts of hijinks getting on there with people who you think are witches who aren't, and people who you think aren't witches who are, and all sorts of scares and things. And then this is the main event, which is Crimson Siege, which is a vampire thriller, quite a hefty one. It took me quite a while to write it. Both are series openers, and I'm currently working on the sequels. And hopefully I want to get some of the To Snare a Witch sequels out either by Christmas or very early next year. Now, I don't know how to classify myself. I'm sure you'll have some ideas. I don't like calling myself a horror writer because for me that conjures ideas of Nightmare on Elm Street and the chainsaw horror flicks and sort of Halloween parts 1 to 26, and that's not at all what I do. My output is where you might say that dark fantasy and gothic horror meet in the middle. All my stories are set in the past. They're all historical stories. They've all got a supernatural theme to them and supernatural elements, but they're not horror. I mean, I set out to entertain and to have stories that are spooky and perhaps make you feel a little woo when you read them. But I don't want to gross people out. I don't want to have people lying at night with the light on, scared to switch it off. I don't feel that I write horror. So possibly I could describe it as supernatural thrillers. I mean, one of the things I try to make sure is that they're fast-paced, they're full of twists and surprises, and there's a lot of action in them. But also I try to make sure that there's a strong emotional content theme running through the books, and I try very hard to have characters who are unusual and memorable. And in fact, I try very hard to have a lot of very sort of strong women characters, feisty characters who sort of stand on their own 2 feet and aren't just there to sort of stand and scream like the assistants in the old Doctor Who shows. Writing, I find writing strong women characters reasonably okay. This is probably helped by the fact that when I first started writing, most of my fiction was appearing in women's magazines, so perhaps that helps. Now, next week I want to talk about Crimson Siege in a bit more detail and talk vampires generally, but what I'd like to just finish off today with is to talk about my Readers Club, which you can join for free. I'll put the link on the comments after the live's completed. And if you join the club, it's absolutely free. You can unsubscribe at any time. You get bonus features, you get behind the scenes news, discounts, giveaways, all sorts of goodies. And one of them is a regular newsletter, and the newsletter's coming out on the 1st of November, and there's some great stuff in this one. I'm really excited about this one. I'll be talking about why I've got this absolute obsession with eating Transylvanian chocolate. Yes, it does exist. My great friend Jerry Hughes, who is an audio actor, he's a radio actor, and a one-man theatre company in many respects, is working with me at the moment to turn some of my dark fantasy stories into audio stories. And he's done a fabulous job on a steampunk story, The Clockmaker's Daughter, that I have recently finished. It's amazing. He's just transformed it. It's a wonderful. And so there'll be a chance to click through to that and have a listen to that. But perhaps the most interesting thing that's going to be in the newsletter, and it's something I'm really excited about, is I've got a guest slot for horror writer Joshua, and here we go. I can't pronounce names. It's like the orange thing. Sorry, Joshua. Griffiths. Sorry about that. He's a wonderful horror writer, but also he comes from Native American heritage, and he's a Cherokee energy healer. But the thing that's really, really, really got me excited is he's a real live ghost whisperer. He talks to ghosts, he helps ghosts. And so he talks about this in the newsletter, and I think you'll find it fascinating. Well, I've come to the end of everything I want to cover today. Sorry it's all a bit raggedy and everything, but I'll get better at it as we go on. If you want to leave comments, if you want to ask questions, please do. I may not be able to get around to them straight away, but in the next couple of days, I will promise you any questions out there, I'll try and answer them as fully as possible. And don't forget, I'm going to put a link to my Readers Club on the comments as soon as this is done. Thanks for watching this, and if you're watching this on Junction Junkies, that's another thing I can't say very well. Hi there, and thanks for dropping in. Hope this hasn't been too bad for you. We'll do it again next week. Cheers now.